Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. On today's English listening practice, we're diving into one of those profound, age-old questions that really gets you thinking. Can money truly change a person's personality?
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
We've all heard the stories, haven't we? The sudden lottery winner who, becomes a recluse, or maybe the self-made billionaire who seems to transform into someone entirely different.
Or the opposite, right?
Exactly. Then there's always that grounded friend who just stays the same no matter how many zeros appear in their bank account.
Yeah, completely unfazed.
These tales spark so much curiosity about money's actual impact. Does it fundamentally rewire who you are? Or does it simply shine a spotlight on what was already present within you?
That's the core tension, isn't it? Rewire or reveal.
Today, we're going to take a deep dive into this fascinating question, exploring it from all angles. The compelling human stories, the insights from psychology, and even the cultural narratives that shape our understanding. Okay, let's unpack this.
That's a wonderful starting point because to genuinely unpack this, we probably need to first clarify what we actually mean by personality.
Good point. What are we talking about here?
In this context, we're talking about that unique blend, that distinct blueprint almost of traits, behaviors, and thought patterns that make you.
Your kind of default setting.
Exactly. It's how you typically react to everyday life. From how you handle a challenging day at work, to your interactions with strangers, or even whether you're naturally the life of the party or prefer, a quiet evening.
Makes sense.
And psychologists often use a widely accepted framework called the Big Five personality traits to help define these aspects. You've probably heard of them.
Yeah, vaguely. Remind me.
Sure. There's openness, which speaks to your curiosity and creativity.
Yeah.
Then conscientiousness, that's your level of organization and dependability.
Okay.
Extroversion, describing whether you're outgoing and social or more reserved. Agreeableness, reflecting your kindness and cooperativeness. And finally, neuroticism, which relates to your emotional stability and how you react to stress.
Got it. The Big Five.
And these traits, as you mentioned earlier, are shaped by a whole mix of things: genetics, your upbringing, all the diverse experiences you accumulate throughout life. And importantly, they tend to remain quite consistent over time, almost like a unique psychological signature, like a fingerprint of your psyche.
So they're pretty stable, generally.
Generally, yes. So when we ask if money can change personality, we're really probing something deeper. Can a significant shift in your financial status, whether it's a sudden life-altering windfall or a devastating loss, actually alter these fundamental core traits?
Can it really flip someone from an introvert to an extrovert? Or make a nice person suddenly selfish?
Precisely. Can it genuinely transform who you are at that core level? Money is much more than just currency. It's a powerful tool. It can open new doors. It can alleviate immense stress.
Or create new kinds of stress.
Right. Absolutely. It can create new burdens and amplify certain behaviors. But does it truly have the power to reshape the very essence of who you are? That's the core question we'll explore as we weave together these stories, the science, and the cultural takes.
It's certainly a compelling thought. Let's start by considering the argument that money can fundamentally change a person. We see a rich tapestry of anecdotal evidence, personal stories, and even some scientific observations suggesting that wealth, or the sudden lack of it, can bring out new behaviors, attitudes, and sometimes, what appear to be entirely different values.
Yeah, you hear those stories all the time.
It makes you wonder if there's something truly transformative at play. Our first point here is how new opportunities can lead to shifting selves.
Okay.
Imagine suddenly having vast wealth. You're often propelled into entirely new environments, social circles, maybe experiences that can genuinely reshape your actions and even your way of thinking.
Like being thrown into a totally different pond.
Exactly. Take Sarah, for instance. Let's picture her. A 32-year-old elementary school teacher from a quiet town in Nebraska, known for being kind, deeply empathetic, and a bit shy. A classic introvert, perfectly content with a modest life, enjoying potlucks with neighbors.
Sounds lovely, very grounded.
Right. Then in 2022, Sarah's world changed overnight. She won a $15 million lottery jackpot.
Wow. 15 million, okay.
Suddenly, she moves to Chicago, buys a sleek high-rise condo, and finds herself mingling with the city's elite, attending exclusive charity galas and art openings. Big change from Nebraska potlucks.
Huge change, culture shock almost.
At first, she was overwhelmed, sure, but she adapted pretty quickly. She traded cardigans for designer dresses, started speaking up confidently at events, and even took on a leadership role in a local nonprofit.
So she found her footing in this new world.
She did. But her old friends back in Nebraska noticed a significant difference. Sarah seemed more confident, yes, but also a bit flashy, and maybe not as quick to listen or as attentive as she used to be. Still kind, they'd say. But there was a new boldness, an edge, that simply wasn't there before.
Interesting.
To her small-town friends, it truly seemed as though money had transformed Sarah into a different person entirely.
Yeah, and that's a classic scenario, and it immediately raises the question, is this a genuine personality change, or is it more of an adaptation to a new context?
Right, like fitting in.
Exactly. Her newfound wealth placed her in a world where extroversion and assertiveness are maybe more highly valued for social success. Sarah, in a sense, adjusted to fit in, much like, I don't know, a chameleon might subtly shift its colors.
That's a good analogy.
Her core traits, like empathy and openness, might still be very much present, but they're now expressed in a different manner, influenced heavily by her surroundings.
So the stage changed, and her performance changed with it.
That's a great way to put it. And research kind of backs this up. Studies have shown that upward mobility, like a big jump in financial status, can indeed lead to observable shifts in behavior, particularly in areas like extroversion and agreeableness.
Oh, really? So people might become more outgoing? Or maybe less agreeable?
Sometimes, yeah. Individuals who find themselves in higher social strata often adopt behaviors valued by those new groups, maybe becoming more outgoing, or at times, perhaps less overtly empathetic, simply in order to successfully navigate their new world. So with Sarah, she hasn't become a completely new person, maybe, but her personality is, in effect, performing on a new stage, requiring an adjusted approach to thrive there.
And this isn't just about lottery winners, right? You see it with entrepreneurs who achieve immense wealth from humble beginnings, or employees who land that massive promotion.
Oh, absolutely.
That shift in lifestyle, gaining access to private jets, joining elite clubs, or even just having the freedom to say no to situations they once had to endure. That can certainly prompt behaviors that seem totally out of character to those who knew them before.
It really shows how money can create this ripple effect, changing not just your circumstances, but how you move through the world, influencing which traits you kind of put forward.
Yeah, definitely. Beyond new opportunities, money also exerts immense pressure or relief on our emotional state, profoundly impacting how our true selves emerge. Which brings us to our second point: stress, security, and emotional fluctuations.
Yes, the stress factor. Huge.
Consider Jake, a 28-year-old from a tough neighborhood in Detroit. Jake had always been cautious, quite anxious, and highly vigilant traits that undoubtedly helped him navigate a challenging childhood,
Survival mechanisms, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
He worked a series of odd jobs, constantly consumed by worry about rent or his mom's medical bills. Then in 2024, a major turning point. Jake's tech startup, an innovative app for local food delivery, was bought out for a staggering $5 million.
Oh, overnight millionaire.
Overnight, the crushing weight of financial stress just vanished. Jake moved to a safer neighborhood, paid off all his mom's bills, and for the first time in years, started sleeping soundly.
That alone must have been incredible.
You bet. And his friends, naturally, noticed a significant difference. He started cracking jokes, taking adventurous risks like skydiving, which he never would have done before, and even began hosting large social gatherings. The anxious, guarded Jake seemed to be replaced by this relaxed, genuinely outgoing guy.
So the worry disappeared and a different side came out.
To his friends, it truly felt like money had just flipped a switch in his personality.
So what's the underlying mechanism here, psychologically speaking? Financial security, in essence, significantly reduced Jake's neuroticism, that underlying anxiety and vigilance that characterized him under constant stress.
It lowered the baseline anxiety.
Exactly. Without the relentless pressure of survival, he was finally free to let other, perhaps latent traits shine through, like his sense of humor or his inherent curiosity, things that were maybe buried before.
Okay, so they were there, just hidden.
Potentially, yes. And psychological research absolutely supports this. Studies have found a clear link between financial security and lower anxiety levels, along with higher life satisfaction. These factors directly influence how personality traits are expressed.
Makes sense. If you're not worried, you act differently.
Right. When you're not constantly worried about paying bills, your inherent neuroticism can often recede, making you appear calmer, more open, and perhaps more adventurous. So Jake isn't a completely new person. He's more accurately described as Jake without the crushing weight of poverty that had been suppressing aspects of his underlying self.
And the reverse is just as stark, isn't it? Think about Maria, a 45-year-old lawyer in New York. Maria was known for being confident, incredibly outgoing, and always in control, a classic extrovert with a high degree of conscientiousness. She built a very successful career, owned a beautiful brownstone, spent vacations in the Hamptons, living the life.
The picture of success.
Totally. Then in 2023, her law firm collapsed amidst a major scandal, and she lost most of her life savings. The stress was relentless, bills piled up, her social status took a massive hit, and she was forced to sell her beloved home.
Devastating. A total reversal.
Maria became visibly irritable, withdrawn, and even a bit paranoid about her future. She would snap at friends and family, completely avoid social events she used to love, and obsessively pore over her dwindling finances. Her former colleagues began to comment, "Maria has changed. She's simply not herself anymore."
And in her case, the intense stress of financial loss amplified Maria's neuroticism and considerably diminished her extroversion. The outgoing confidence seemed to just evaporate under the pressure.
Yeah.
Research has shown that financial strain can markedly increase negative emotionality, making people appear less like their normal selves. Maria's core traits, her inherent confidence, her formidable drive, are likely still present. They're just temporarily buried under the profound anxiety of her new reality.
So they're dormant, maybe?
Dormant is a good word. If her financial circumstances were to stabilize, it's highly probable her old sparkle and zest would return, suggesting her personality didn't change at its core, but rather adapted, maybe poorly, to a very harsh set of circumstances.
Let's consider another powerful influence: the seduction of power and status. Money often comes hand in hand with power, and that power can truly alter how you act in ways that look exactly like a complete personality overhaul.
Power. That's a tricky one.
Take Tom, a 42-year-old middle manager at a manufacturing company in Ohio. Tom had always been agreeable, very team-oriented, and a bit of a people-pleaser. You know, the type always brings donuts to meetings, stays late to help a struggling coworker.
The reliable, nice guy.
Exactly. In 2021, Tom lands a massive promotion to VP, complete with a 7-figure salary and that coveted corner office. Suddenly, he's the one calling the shots, and everyone around him is scrambling to impress him.
Big shift in status and authority.
Huge. And over time, Tom noticeably changed. He started barking orders, dismissing ideas he would have once championed, and acting with a real sense of entitlement, like expecting his assistant to fetch his coffee without even asking nicely.
Oof. Not the donut guy anymore.
Not at all. His team began to whisper, money has really gone to his head. To them, Tom's natural agreeableness seemed to vanish, replaced by an unsettling arrogance.
So is that a genuine personality shift? Or something else?
What do you think?
Well, maybe not a fundamental personality change. What we're likely witnessing here are power dynamics in full effect. Studies have found that individuals in positions of power often become, less empathetic and more self-focused.
Why is that?
It seems to be because they become less reliant on others' approval for their success or security. Tom's newfound wealth and elevated status granted him a significant amount of control, and he naturally leaned into behaviors that were suited perhaps to his new powerful role. He didn't need to be agreeable anymore, in his mind.
So the power changed the behavior, not the person deep down.
That's the argument. This power effect isn't exclusive to corporate executives either. Even relatively modest wealth can significantly shift how you interact with others. Think about a small business owner who suddenly lands a huge contract, or a freelance professional who goes viral and starts charging premium rates.
Right, they might get more assertive.
Exactly. The newfound ability to say no or to demand more can make you seem more assertive or even cold to those who knew you before your financial circumstances changed. Tom's story really illustrates how money can amplify traits like dominance or self-interest, especially when that financial game comes bundled with significant power.
Another often overlooked aspect is the isolation of wealth. This one's kind of surprising, but wealth can actually be a very lonely experience, and that isolation can profoundly reshape how you present yourself to the world.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? More money, more friends. Not always.
Consider Emily, a 30-year-old graphic designer in Austin, Texas. Emily had always been warm, social, and a bit of a free spirit, someone high on extroversion and openness, always chatting with strangers.
The life of the party type.
Totally. In 2023, she created a viral app that sold for an incredible $10 million. Suddenly, she was rich, and her life began to change in ways she simply hadn't expected.
Okay, here come the complications.
You guessed it. Friends she hadn't heard from in years started calling, asking for loans. Distant relatives mysteriously emerged from the woodwork, and she was constantly bombarded with pitches from dubious investors.
The vulture's circle.
Exactly. To protect herself from this onslaught, Emily eventually moved to a gated community and became far more selective about who she trusted. Over time, Emily became noticeably less bubbly. She was more guarded, less likely to strike up conversations with strangers, and even developed a touch of cynicism about people's motives.
Understandable, given the circumstances.
Her old friends began to feel she had become distant, perhaps even a bit snobby.
So from a psychological perspective, again, this isn't necessarily a fundamental shift in her personality. What we're observing is Emily adapting to the isolation that often accompanies sudden, large wealth.
It's a defense mechanism.
In a way, yes. Research suggests that wealthier individuals frequently report feeling more isolated, and this can indeed lead to behaviors like defensiveness or a reduction in openness. Emily's core extroversion is likely still present, but it's been modulated by a very real need to protect herself from a world that now primarily sees her as a walking ATM.
That's a harsh reality.
It can be. And this isolation can also work in the opposite direction. Imagine someone who experiences a significant financial loss and subsequently feels ostracized from their former social circle. The loneliness that can come with poverty might make them seem withdrawn or bitter, even if their fundamental personality hasn't shifted an inch. Emily's story highlights how money, or the sudden absence of it, can create a social bubble that shapes how your underlying personality is perceived and expressed.
And finally, under this argument for change, we have the temptation of materialism. Money can certainly draw individuals towards a materialistic lifestyle, which, on the surface, can create the appearance of a personality shift.
The lure of shiny things.
Totally. Let's look at Alex, a 27-year-old barista in Seattle. Alex had always been laid back, highly creative, and frankly, a bit of a free spirit. He deeply valued experiences over possessions, loved open mic nights, thrift store finds, that kind of thing.
Very Seattle.
Right. In 2024, Alex inherited $2 million from a great uncle he barely knew.
Another life changer.
Initially, he used the money for what he truly loved: travel, funding his art projects. But soon, things started to shift. He found himself buying a luxury SUV, a high-end watch, and eventually a penthouse apartment.
The slippery slope of stuff.
His social media feeds quickly filled with flashy posts, and he began associating with a new crowd, one seemingly obsessed with status and expensive possessions. His old friends began to feel like he'd become shallow, more concerned with appearances than with authenticity.
So has Alex's personality genuinely changed? On the surface, it certainly seems that way. His inherent openness and laid-back vibe appear to have given way to overt materialism.
Yeah, it looks like a total 180.
However, studies indicate that materialism often originates more from external pressures, such as social comparison or prevalent cultural norms, rather than a deep, core personality alteration. Alex's newfound wealth exposed him to a new social world where status symbols were paramount, and he, perhaps unconsciously, just leaned into that conformity.
Trying to fit in again, but in a different way.
Possibly. The argument here is that if he were to lose that wealth, or if he were to actively choose to reconnect with his old values, his free spirit side might very well resurface. This would indicate that his core personality remains consistent, merely expressed differently given his circumstances.
The potential for the old Alex is still there.
Exactly. And materialism can also work in reverse. Someone who loses wealth might dramatically reject the flashy lifestyle they once pursued, embracing simplicity in a way that also looks like a profound personality change. Alex's story shows how money can tempt you to prioritize things that don't truly align with your deeper self, thereby creating the illusion of a completely new personality.
Wow. Okay, those examples make a powerful case for the transformative power of money, at least on the surface. But let's flip the script now and explore the case against money fundamentally changing personality. This perspective argues that money doesn't actually alter your underlying self. Instead, it simply reveals or amplifies who you were all along.
Right, the amplification idea.
The core idea here is that your fundamental traits are pretty hardwired, and money just turns up the volume on what's already within you. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, I'm ready.
Consider Lisa, a 38-year-old nurse in Atlanta who has always been incredibly generous, almost to a fault. She's the type who would willingly give her last $20 to a friend in need or consistently volunteer at the local homeless shelter. Just a genuinely kind person.
We all know someone like Lisa.
Right. In 2023, Lisa inherited a substantial $3 million from her grandmother. Did she go on a wild spending spree or suddenly become a snob?
Well, let me guess.
No, not at all. Lisa immediately set up a foundation for homeless youth, funded scholarships for aspiring nursing students, and continued to host epic community barbecues for her neighbors. Her friends weren't surprised in the least. They simply said, "That's just Lisa being Lisa, but now with more zeros in her bank account."
Money just gave her more tools for her generosity.
Exactly. Now contrast Lisa's story with Greg, a 40-year-old salesman who was always, let's be honest, a bit selfish. Charming, yes, but he consistently prioritized himself, whether it was hogging the spotlight or conveniently forgetting to split the bill fairly.
Uh-oh. We know this type too.
When Greg won $8 million in a poker tournament, his first actions were to buy a sprawling mansion and a luxurious yacht. And then he cut off his struggling family members who asked for help.
Ouch. Predictable, maybe.
His friends just rolled their eyes, commenting, "Classic Greg, just with fancier toys now." In both of these cases, money didn't fundamentally change their personalities. It merely amplified their pre-existing tendencies. Lisa's deep-seated generosity and Greg's self-centeredness were always there. Wealth simply gave them a much bigger stage on which to express those traits.
This is the very essence of what we call the amplification theory, and it's actually well supported by psychological research. Comprehensive analyses, looking at lots of studies, have found that while major life events like a significant gain or loss of wealth can indeed influence behavior, core personality traits generally remain remarkably stable over time.
So the foundation stays the same.
Largely, yes. Money might open up more avenues for you to express who you truly are, whether that means acting with greater kindness or exhibiting more greed, but it doesn't typically rewrite your fundamental makeup, so to speak. Lisa and Greg's stories serve as powerful illustrations of how money can make your true colors shine even brighter, for better or for worse.
That makes a lot of sense.
And this leads us directly to the concept of the stability of core traits. For a long time, psychologists have largely agreed that personality is pretty much consistent by adulthood. Those big 5 traits we discussed earlier, they typically don't shift dramatically unless an individual goes through truly extreme circumstances, like a severe brain injury or maybe very intensive long-term therapy.
Things far beyond just getting rich or going broke.
Generally, yes. Money, while undoubtedly a significant life event, is usually not considered enough to completely overhaul your psyche. Let's revisit Sarah, our lottery-winning teacher.
Right, the one who moved to Chicago.
Her shift toward newfound confidence and a flashier demeanor might seem like a personality change, but it's more likely a situational adaptation. If, hypothetically, her wealth were removed, say, she decided to donate all of it to charity, it's highly plausible that she would revert to her quieter, empathetic self pretty quickly.
The Nebraska Sarah would come back.
Quite possibly. Longitudinal studies, which track individuals over several decades, have found that while wealth certainly influenced lifestyle and behavior, it did not significantly alter core traits such as extroversion or conscientiousness over the long haul. So, Sarah's new boldness is most likely her inherent openness and empathy adapting to the demands of a high society context. Her core personality is still there, it's just dressed up in different attire for a new role.
Okay.
And this stability also holds true for those who experience financial loss. Maria, the lawyer who went broke. She might appear withdrawn now, but her inherent confidence and drive are likely just dormant, waiting for her circumstances to stabilize before they potentially resurface.
So if it's not truly changing who we are at the core, what is the real mechanism at play when we see these dramatic shifts? Is it purely about adapting to a new environment, like you said?
Your question goes right to the heart of it. It brings us to a crucial point. Context is king. It's often not the money itself, but the context it creates that makes people seem different.
Explain that a bit more.
Take Mike, a 35-year-old plumber in Denver. Mike has always been incredibly laid back and friendly, the kind of guy who would much rather crack open a beer with his buddies than chase after social status. Very down to earth.
Your average Joe, basically.
Pretty much. In 2022, Mike's plumbing business landed an enormous contract with a major developer, and suddenly he was worth $4 million.
Nice for Mike.
Definitely. He moved his family to an upscale suburb where his new neighbors were seemingly obsessed with keeping up appearances, expensive cars in every driveway, constant bragging about private school.
Keeping up with the Joneses, big time.
Yeah.
To fit in, Mike started dressing much sharper, networking reluctantly at country clubs, and even took up golf, which he hated. His old friends back in his original neighborhood started to think he'd become bougie, kind of stuck up.
Yeah.
But Mike himself insisted he was still the same guy inside.
And this situation perfectly illustrates what's known as social role theory, which suggests that people adjust their behavior to fit the roles they find themselves in. Research has shown that individuals in higher socioeconomic brackets often adopt behaviors associated with those groups, like becoming more assertive or maybe less openly emotional, not because their personality has fundamentally changed, but because their new environment kind of demands it.
So he's playing a role to fit the context.
Exactly. Mike's laid-back nature is still very much there. He's simply playing the part that his new world expects of him. If he were to move back to his old neighborhood tomorrow, his jeans and beer vibe would undoubtedly return almost instantly.
Okay, that makes sense. Context is key.
And this context effect also applies to situations of poverty. Someone who loses their wealth might appear humbler or more frugal, not because their personality changed, but because their new reality necessitates it. Mike's story powerfully demonstrates how money's impact is often less about altering your core self and more about the specific stage you find yourself on, which influences how you present yourself.
And linking into that, any apparent change is often more about values and choices, not personality. It's about how increased resources allow existing values to be amplified, right?
Precisely. Meet Rachel, a 33-year-old entrepreneur in Miami who has always been incredibly ambitious and, frankly, a tad ruthless. She's the type to stay up all night perfecting a pitch, even if it means stepping on a few toes to get ahead. Driven.
Laser focused.
Very. In 2024, her eco-friendly fashion brand went public, making her a billionaire almost overnight.
Wow.
Rachel quickly started making headlines for her lavish parties, aggressive business deals, and her new private jet. Her friends began to say she had become too big for her britches, but was it truly a personality change?
Doesn't sound like it based on what you're saying.
Probably not. Rachel's ambition and relentless drive were always deeply ingrained within her. Money simply provided her with a much larger platform on which to act out those traits. Studies have found that wealth tends to amplify existing values rather than generating entirely new ones.
So if you value status, money lets you chase it harder.
Exactly. If an individual already values status highly, then money might empower them to pursue it much more intensely. Conversely, if they value relationships above all else, they might use their wealth to strengthen those connections, like Lisa did. Rachel's choices, the lavish parties, the private jet, the aggressive deals, clearly align with her long-standing priorities, not with a transformed personality.
It's consistent with who she always was, just bigger.
Right. And this principle also holds true for someone who loses money and chooses to lean into resilience rather than succumbing to bitterness. Their choices reflect pre-existing values, not a personality rewrite.
And finally, under this no-change argument, a key factor that can prevent money from changing a person is the role of emotional intelligence, or EI.
EI. Very important.
People with high emotional intelligence, those who are genuinely self-aware, deeply empathetic, and skilled at managing their own emotions, tend to remain remarkably consistent regardless of their financial situation.
Yeah. That's what the research suggests. Let's look at Priya again, our Silicon Valley entrepreneur.
The one who sold her AI startup.
That's her. Despite her immense wealth, Priya's high emotional intelligence helped her stay relatively grounded, particularly when she focused her energy on mentoring underprivileged kids. Her self-awareness allowed her to notice when she might be slipping into status-driven behaviors, and she was able to actively course-correct.
So she could catch herself acting differently.
Yes, because she was tuned in to her own feelings and values. Research has specifically found that individuals with high EI are significantly less likely to exhibit major behavioral shifts after changes in wealth, whether gaining or losing it. This is because they are better at aligning their actions with their core values.
Unlike maybe Greg, the selfish salesman.
Exactly. Contrast that with someone like Greg. His potentially lower emotional intelligence meant he was less aware of how his actions impacted others, allowing his newfound wealth to amplify his self-centeredness without much internal reflection or challenge. Emotional intelligence really acts like an anchor, keeping your personality consistent even as your bank account experiences significant swings.
Those points really solidify the argument against fundamental change. It seems more about amplification and context.
It does lean that way, doesn't it? But the perception of change is so strong.
It really is. Let's explore some more detailed, vivid stories to really bring this to life. These are composites inspired by real-life patterns and blending actual cases with fictionalized details for privacy. But they beautifully illustrate this complex interplay between money and perceived personality changes.
Okay, let's hear them.
Our first story is about the lottery winner's spiral, David. David was a 40-year-old mechanic from a small town in Ohio. The quintessential good guy, hardworking, loyal, a bit reserved, had a tight-knit group of friends, a modest house, loved restoring vintage cars.
Sounds like a solid guy.
Very. In 2018, David wins a staggering $50 million lottery jackpot.
50 million. Okay, that's serious money.
At first, he was cautious, paid off his mortgage, bought a new reliable truck, set him college funds for his kids. His friends initially thought, David's still David, just with a better truck.
Sensible start.
But things began to shift. David was bombarded with requests. Friends wanted loans, charities pitched causes, strangers sent him sob stories. He started to feel this growing sense of paranoia, constantly wondering who was genuinely interested in him versus his money.
The pressure starts mounting.
To escape this pressure, he moved to a gated community in Florida, gradually cutting ties with his old life and friends. New friends emerged, people who loved the high-roller lifestyle. David, who was never one for the spotlight, found himself going to yacht parties, wearing flashy designer watches, and even gambling significant sums at casinos.
Whoa, total departure from the mechanic life.
Completely. His old buddies barely recognized him. He was more confident, certainly, but also distant, even a bit arrogant, snapping at waiters and openly bragging about his wealth. By 2022, David's marriage was crumbling, and he had blown through half his winnings on bad investments and lavish spending. He was stressed, cynical, and felt utterly lost.
A cautionary tale.
His friends were convinced the money had changed him, turning a humble guy into a jerk.
But was it really that simple? David's story is a powerful illustration of how the immense pressure of sudden wealth, the perceived betrayal from those seeking his money, and the influence of entirely new social circles pushed him to adapt in ways that felt deeply unnatural to his core self.
So he was reacting to the chaos.
It seems likely. When he eventually started therapy in 2023, he began to reconnect with his old values, things like loyalty and simplicity. And slowly but surely, he started to seem like the old David again. His personality didn't truly change. It was, in essence, just buried, suppressed by the chaos that money brought into his life.
So the core David was still in there.
It suggests so. This story closely mirrors real-life lottery winners who have faced similar struggles: family rifts, disastrous investments, a visible shift from humility to reckless behavior. David's case underscores how money can create a perfect storm of pressure, isolation, and temptation that, from the outside, looks exactly like a personality change, but is more accurately a complex, often painful process of adaptation.
Okay, our second story is about the self-made millionaire Priya. We touched on her earlier. She was a 35-year-old software engineer from Bangalore, grew up middle class, always known for being ambitious, incredibly curious, her perfectionist, high conscientiousness, and openness.
Right, the Silicon Valley success.
She moved to Silicon Valley, worked her way up, and in 2025, her innovative AI startup was acquired for an astonishing $200 million. Priya was now a multimillionaire, living a life she had never even imagined.
200 million, even bigger numbers.
At first, she used her wealth to fuel her true passions, funded tech education for underprivileged kids, traveled extensively to learn about global cultures, invested in other innovative startups. Her friends admired her. She was still the driven, curious Priya, just with a much greater impact.
Using it for good initially.
But the unique pressures of immense wealth in that specific environment began to creep in. Hounded by demanding investors, scrutinized constantly on social media, judged by the Silicon Valley elite. To cope, Priya became increasingly guarded and less trusting. She would snap at employees, prioritize lucrative deals over personal relationships, and began to value status like owning a flashy car or being in prestigious magazines over genuine substance.
The pressure changed her outward behavior.
To outsiders, it certainly looked as though Priya's personality had shifted dramatically. She appeared less warm, more ruthless, perhaps even cold.
But her inner circle saw differently.
Her inner circle observed that her perfectionism and ambition were always deeply present. Money simply provided a much larger stage for these qualities to be amplified, maybe warped a bit by the pressure. When Priya took a sabbatical in 2026 and dedicated her time to mentoring children, her warmth and genuine nature quickly returned.
So stepping away brought her back.
Exactly. Her core personality didn't seem to change. It was rather significantly shaped, or maybe masked, by the high-stakes world she had entered and the pressures it exerted. This scenario echoes stories of some well-known tech moguls who sometimes appear to change under the intense spotlight, but often revert to their fundamental selves when they step back.
Context again. That Silicon Valley context is intense.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Next, let's talk about the fall from Grace Carlos. Carlos was a 50-year-old real estate mogul in Miami. Undeniably charismatic, extremely confident, and perhaps, a bit narcissistic, always the loudest, most captivating person in any room. built an immense fortune through savvy deals and a larger-than-life persona.
The king of his castle.
Totally. In 2023, a sudden market crash wiped out most of his wealth. Forced to sell properties, his extensive social circle rapidly shrank, his influence waned. Poof, gone.
Ouch. From hero to zero, financially.
Carlos became bitter, lashing out at his family, obsessively mourning his financial losses, increasing his drinking. His once charming extroversion transformed into angry, volatile outbursts. His friends were convinced that the loss of money had profoundly changed him.
Turned him nasty.
Yeah. But did it truly change him or reveal something else?
Well, Carlos's narcissism and his deep-seated need for attention were likely always present. Without the money to fuel them or to provide the grand stage he was accustomed to, maybe these traits manifested in much darker, more destructive ways.
So the negative side came out when the prop was gone.
Plausibly. However, by 2025, Carlos began rebuilding with a smaller real estate venture, and remarkably, his charisma started to return as he focused on this new endeavor. This suggests his personality didn't undergo a fundamental shift. Instead, it adapted to his new, challenging reality, demonstrating his underlying traits could reemerge when circumstances allowed, even on a smaller scale.
Interesting. The drive was still there.
It mirrors cases of some fallen tycoons who seem to lose themselves amidst financial ruin, but then bounce back, often reclaiming aspects of their former personalities when their circumstances improve, even slightly.
Finally, we have the refreshing story of the humble billionaire Anita. Anita was a 60-year-old retiree living in Minnesota, a woman always known for being frugal, incredibly kind, and deeply community-focused.
A Midwestern gem.
Exactly. In 2020, she quietly made a relatively small investment in a biotech startup that unexpectedly skyrocketed in value, making her a billionaire.
Whoa. From retiree to billionaire, quietly.
Quietly is the key word. Unlike David or Priya, Anita didn't significantly change her lifestyle. She continued to live in her modest home, drove her old, reliable car, and remained a dedicated volunteer at her local church. She anonymously donated millions to various causes, funded local schools, and continued to host her beloved potlucks for her neighbors.
Just kept being Anita.
Her friends simply observed, "She's the same Anita, just with a much bigger checkbook."
Anita's story powerfully demonstrates that money doesn't always shift behavior or personality. Her consistently high agreeableness and conscientiousness, combined with her exceptionally strong values, kept her firmly grounded.
The anchor we talked about.
Exactly. Research confirms that individuals with strong emotional intelligence and clear, well-defined values are indeed less likely to exhibit behavioral shifts after gaining significant wealth. Their personalities act as powerful anchors, keeping them steady. Anita's case, which is notably inspired by real-life figures like Warren Buffett, who famously maintains a modest lifestyle, and Keanu Reeves, known for his generosity and down-to-earth demeanor, truly proves that personality can remain incredibly resilient, particularly when your sense of self is rock solid and not tied to external stuff.
Those stories really drive home the complexity. So, what does science really say about this intricate dance between money and personality? Let's dive into the research to unpack how wealth, or the lack of it, interacts with who we are. What's truly fascinating here is how multiple psychological concepts come into play.
Yeah, it's not just one simple mechanism. One major factor is self-concept and identity. How you perceive yourself plays an enormous role in how money ultimately affects you.
How you see yourself matters.
Hugely. When David won the lottery, he began to see himself as a rich guy, and this new self-perception seemed to lead to those flashy behaviors that felt so out of character for him. Research suggests wealth can indeed shift one's self-concept, especially if a person's identity is closely tied to their financial status.
If being rich becomes who you are.
Right. If you primarily see yourself as successful because of your money, you might start adopting behaviors like increased assertiveness or a greater focus on materialism that align with that new image. However, when that identity is challenged, as with David's financial losses, his old self began to resurface, strongly implying his core personality never genuinely changed.
And Maria, the lawyer.
Same idea. Maria had tied her identity closely to her wealth and status. When she lost it, her self-concept took a significant hit, leading to her withdrawal and irritability. Yet her core traits, her confidence and drive, were still likely there, just waiting for an opportunity to shine again.
Okay, self-concept is big. What else?
Then there's social comparison and envy. Money often intensifies social comparison, which can undeniably lead to different behaviors.
Keeping up with the Joneses, amplified.
Exactly. Priya's increased ruthlessness in Silicon Valley, for example, might have stemmed partly from constantly comparing herself to other immensely successful tech moguls, pushing her to relentlessly chase higher status. Studies have discovered that wealthier individuals are actually more likely to engage in social comparison, and this can foster either competitiveness or a sense of entitlement.
And for those who lose money.
The comparison can be just as potent, but in reverse. Carlos's profound bitterness, after his financial loss, likely arose from comparing his current, broke self to his former wealthy self. Money clearly amplifies these comparisons, making a person's personality seem different as they either aggressively pursue or bitterly mourn a certain status.
That makes sense. What about adapting over time?
That brings us to the hedonic treadmill. This is a concept we often hear about in discussions of happiness, but it also applies quite well to personality expression. The theory posits that individuals tend to adapt to new circumstances, whether positive or negative, and often return to a baseline level of happiness and, by extension, their general personality expression over time.
So the initial shock wears off.
Essentially, yes. Research famously found that lottery winners, after the initial euphoria, often return to their pre-win happiness levels after just a few years. David's flashy, high-rolling phase was ultimately temporary. Once the novelty of his immense wealth wore off, his original, more grounded traits began to reemerge. This suggests that money's impact on personality expression is often transient, as people naturally adjust to their new normal.
We adapt back to our baseline.
We tend to, yes. And we absolutely cannot overlook cultural influences. Culture significantly shapes how money affects personality.
How so?
Well, in individualistic cultures, like the United States, wealth is very often linked to personal achievement and autonomy. This can naturally amplify traits such as assertiveness or independence. Making it is a personal victory.
Right.
Conversely, in more collectivist cultures, found in many parts of Asia, for example, wealth might prompt an individual toward greater generosity or a stronger focus on community well-being because the emphasis is more on the group.
Different cultural values lead to different expressions of wealth.
Precisely. Studies have explicitly found that wealth's impact varies considerably depending on prevailing cultural values. Priya's experience, for instance, might have unfolded quite differently if she had achieved her wealth in Bangalore, where stronger community ties might have kept her more grounded, as opposed to the intensely competitive and individualistic environment of Silicon Valley. Culture provides the lens through which money's effects are filtered.
Fascinating. And is there anything happening in the brain itself?
There is. Finally, there's a compelling neurological aspect: the role of dopamine and reward. Money can powerfully impact the brain's reward system, affecting behavior without necessarily altering core personality.
Money is a drug, almost.
In a neurochemical sense, potentially. Wealth has the potential to boost dopamine, that feel-good chemical, especially when it's tied to feelings of status or power. This rush can reinforce certain behaviors. Research supports the link between wealth and those dopamine boosts specifically related to status.
So acting powerful feels good, chemically.
It can. This means that behaviors like Tom's newfound dominance as VP or Alex's pursuit of luxury items are rewarded by the brain, making them more likely to be repeated and thus appear like a personality change. But it's fundamentally a neurological response to new stimuli, not necessarily a deep alteration of the self. When those stimuli, the wealth or power, fade, the behaviors often revert. It's a response, not a rewrite.
Wow. Okay, this inherent fascination with how money affects personality isn't just a psychological puzzle. It's been a long-standing cultural obsession. It's reflected everywhere, from ancient myths to modern movies and reality TV. Let's explore some cultural touchstones to see what they reveal.
Yeah, stories are powerful ways we process this question.
In literature, a classic example is Pip in Charles Dickens' Great Expectations. Pip, a poor orphan, suddenly inherits a fortune and undergoes this transformation from a humble, earnest kid into a snobbish, entitled gentleman, abandoning old friends like Joe, who had raised him. He relentlessly chases status in London.
A cautionary tale from the 19th century.
Exactly. His wealth indeed fuels his arrogance. However, by the end of the novel, after suffering significant financial losses, he's brought back to his roots, rediscovering his original kindness and loyalty. This perfectly aligns with the amplification theory. Pip's flaws were always there, perhaps dormant, but money simply shone a blinding spotlight on them. His story, written way back in 1861, still resonates powerfully today, showing how wealth can distort, but ultimately maybe not destroy, your core self.
And in movies, a more modern, extreme example is Jordan Belfort's story in The Wolf of Wall Street. It's a wild, over-the-top ride, isn't it?
Intense.
He starts as a hungry, ambitious stockbroker and then morphs into this hedonistic, greedy millionaire. His immense wealth certainly enables extreme excess drugs, wild parties, elaborate scams, but his core traits, his ambition, his undeniable charisma, and his underlying ruthlessness were clearly present from the very beginning.
The seeds were there.
Definitely. The film suggests that money didn't fundamentally change Jordan. It merely allowed him to be his absolute worst self on a truly grand scale. Even when he loses everything, his charisma and ability to influence others persist, strongly hinting that his personality was remarkably consistent, simply amplified to an extreme degree by wealth.
Reality TV, of course, absolutely loves to exploit money's impact. Think about lottery shows or series like Rich Kids of Beverly Hills.
Oh, prime territory for this topic.
These shows thrive on showcasing how wealth can bring out extreme drama, entitlement, recklessness, or, surprisingly, even acts of profound generosity. In some reality shows, families given a large sum of money often immediately reveal their true values. Some hoard it jealously, while others quickly move to share it with their community.
A social experiment in real time.
Rich Kids often highlights spoiled heirs acting selfishly, but also occasionally provides glimpses of vulnerability or unexpected kindness. These shows consistently reinforce the idea that money amplifies what's already present within an individual, whether it's greed, compassion, or a tendency towards extravagance, rather than creating an entirely new personality from scratch.
It makes for good TV, showing those amplified traits. And then there's social media platforms like X or Instagram. They're a fascinating goldmine for observing how money can shape public personas.
Oh yeah, the curated lives.
Take influencers who transition from relative obscurity to immense wealth through brand deals and viral content. Some, like a hypothetical fitness guru who suddenly starts flaunting private jets and designer goods, seem to change into arrogant show-offs. But if you dig into their older posts, you might often find hints of that ego or a pre-existing desire for recognition all along.
The clues were there.
Often. X also shows the flip side, millionaires who remain incredibly relatable, like a tech founder sharing humble, practical tips despite their vast wealth. Research suggests that social media can actually exaggerate wealth's impact on behavior because people often curate public personas specifically to match their audience's expectations or to project a certain image. In these cases, money isn't changing them, it's amplifying their performance for a very public stage.
So after diving deep into all these stories and psychological concepts, one crucial underlying theme consistently emerges: the role of choice and awareness. Money presents a myriad of options, but it doesn't actually compel a personality change. This raises an important question.
That's a really key point. Money opens up new avenues, provides resources, removes constraints, but individuals ultimately choose how to navigate these newfound circumstances.
We still have agency.
We do. David, for example, could have chosen to remain grounded in Ohio and maintained his old life and friendships, perhaps with stricter boundaries. Priya, despite her immense success, could have consciously prioritized her passion for mentoring over the pursuit of higher status within Silicon Valley's elite. And Carlos, after his devastating financial loss, could have chosen resilience and rebuilding over succumbing to bitterness and lashing out.
The choice was there, even if it was hard.
Exactly. And evidence supports this idea of choice. Studies have found that self-awareness and intentional choices can significantly reduce money's behavioral impact. People who regularly reflect on their core values, whether through therapy, journaling, or even deep, honest conversations with trusted friends, are far less likely to act out of character due to the influence of wealth or poverty.
Being mindful makes a difference.
It really does. This is precisely where emotional intelligence plays such a vital role again. Anita, our humble billionaire, remained steadfastly true to herself because she was deeply aware of her core values: community, kindness, and she consistently made choices that aligned with them. Therapy helped David reconnect with his old self and values, and Priya's sabbatical brought her back to her roots. Even Carlos's eventual comeback demonstrated his capacity to choose resilience over bitterness.
And having good people around helps too, right?
Absolutely crucial. Strong support systems, your friends, family, mentors, are vital in reminding individuals of their true selves when money tries to pull them in new directions or when hardship makes them want to retreat.
It's also important to acknowledge, as we saw with Anita, that there are indeed exceptions when money doesn't change a thing. These are individuals who seem to defy the perceived trend of money-induced personality shifts.
The Warren Buffetts of the world.
Exactly. Think about figures like Warren Buffett, the billionaire who famously maintains a modest lifestyle, still living in his 1958 Omaha house, driving a modest car, enjoying simple meals at McDonald's. His frugality and humility appear completely untouched by his vast wealth. Or consider Keanu Reeves, who is renowned for giving away millions to charity while remaining incredibly down-to-earth and relatable.
They seem immune.
And it's not just billionaires. We see everyday heroes, like a teacher who, despite facing significant financial hardship and living paycheck to paycheck, consistently remains cheerful, generous, and optimistic.
Right. These individuals are true exceptions, or maybe just strong examples, precisely because their sense of self, their fundamental identity, is far stronger and more deeply rooted than their bank account balance. Research confirms this, finding that people with high emotional intelligence and very strong, well-defined values are significantly less likely to show behavioral shifts after gaining wealth. Their personalities genuinely act as powerful anchors, keeping them steady and consistent.
And it works both ways. Poverty doesn't have to change you either.
Absolutely. The teacher you mentioned, who, despite financial struggles, remains cheerful and generous, exemplifies this. Their core traits, optimism, kindness, shine through regardless of their circumstances. These cases powerfully demonstrate that personality can be incredibly resilient, especially when it's grounded in strong self-awareness and a clear sense of purpose, regardless of the presence or absence of wealth.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? How do you navigate money's profound impact, whether you find yourself rolling in it or perhaps just scraping by? We've gathered some practical tips, drawing directly from all the stories and research we've discussed today to help you stay true to yourself.
Yeah, let's make this practical.
First, know your values. Regularly take the time to maybe write down what truly matters most to you: family, creativity, community, integrity, whatever it is. And then frequently review that list to ensure your daily choices align with those core beliefs. Think about Priya's groundedness through mentoring. It was because she tied her actions to her deeply held values.
Makes sense. Keep your compass calibrated.
Second, build a strong support system. Surround yourself with people who genuinely know the real you, those who have seen you through thick and thin. David's old friends could have helped him stay true to himself if he hadn't isolated himself. Honest friends and family provide crucial accountability and help you maintain authenticity.
Don't underestimate your real friends.
Third, practice self-awareness. Engage in activities like therapy if needed, journaling, meditation, or just quiet reflection. These practices can help you recognize when money's influence might be subtly leading you astray, potentially curbing negative behaviors, much like Carlos's bitterness might have been curbed with earlier reflection.
Check in with yourself regularly.
Fourth, set boundaries. Learn to confidently say no to those who seek to exploit your wealth, no to status-driven social circles that don't align with your true self, and no to external pressure to keep up with others. Learning from Emily's initial struggles shows how crucial this is for protecting your well-being and authenticity.
Protecting your space and your values.
Fifth, use money as a tool, not an identity. Carlos's downfall was intrinsically tied to seeing himself as his wealth. Instead, view money as simply a resource, a means to achieve your goals and support your values, rather than something that defines your entire self-worth.
Money is something you have, not something you are.
Sixth, give back. Engage in acts of generosity, whether it's donating your time, your skills, or your money, if you can. Acts of giving, as shown by Anita, can firmly anchor you to positive values and actively reinforce positive traits. Research even notes that giving consistently boosts overall well-being.
Good for others, good for you.
And finally, number 7, stay curious. Continuously seek out new learning opportunities and commit to personal growth. Openness to new experiences allows you to adapt gracefully to changes in wealth or poverty without losing your core self, as beautifully exemplified by Priya's global travels and quest for knowledge, even amidst her pressures.
Keep growing, keep learning.
So, does money change personality? After all these stories, studies, and cultural dives, the answer seems to be a nuanced, not really, but it can certainly feel like it. Your core traits, your big 5, your very essence, are remarkably stable. Money doesn't magically rewrite your DNA.
Yeah, the core seems pretty resilient.
But it absolutely can change how those traits show up in the world. It's a bit like putting a filter on a photograph. The underlying image is still the same, but the overall vibe and how it's perceived can look entirely different.
That's a good way to think about it. So to summarize our key takeaways. First, money amplifies what's already there. Lisa's inherent generosity and Greg's selfishness both became much louder and more pronounced with the introduction of wealth.
Turns up the volume.
Second, it creates new contexts.
What?
Sarah's high society life and Mike's move to an upscale suburb pushed them to adapt their behaviors in ways that were perceived as significant changes. Context matters hugely.
The stage changes the performance.
Third, behavioral shifts are often about choices. Rachel's flashy lifestyle, for instance, reflected her existing values and choices, amplified by resources, not the formation of a new personality.
Choices based on existing values.
And finally, it's not universal. Some individuals, like Anita and Warren Buffett, remained remarkably consistent because their values and self-awareness were much stronger than the influence of their wealth or poverty.
The anchors held firm. Money is an undeniably powerful force. It can open doors you never imagined, create profound stress, and tempt you with status, making you seem like a different person. But at your core, you are still you. The stories of David, Priya, and Carlos show us that money's ultimate impact depends not on some mystical transformation, but on the context you find yourself in, the choices you make, and your level of self-awareness.
It's about how you navigate it.
Exactly. It's not about the cash itself, but how you choose to navigate the world it creates. So whether you're dreaming of millions or just trying to pay the bills, remember, you've got the power to decide how money shapes your story. Stay true to yourself, and no amount of wealth, or lack of it, can truly change who you are deep down.
Well said.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. If you enjoyed this exploration, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.